Little girl's heartbreaking cry for help exposed an amazing millionaire's transformative secret. Rain fell like judgment on the town of Maplewood that afternoon, its cold droplets mingling with Mia's mounting dread. Sorting through the mail at the kitchen table, she caught fragments of whispered conversation between her mother and the landlord that ignited a familiar feeling in her gut: fear. The eviction notice lay stark and real before her, a relentless reminder of the financial burden hanging over them. It clenched like a vice around Mia's chest, squeezing tight. How could they possibly end up on the streets when her mother worked so hard? Why can't we just be okay? Mia wondered, her brow furrowed as she swallowed the rising lump in her throat. The rain drummed a relentless rhythm against the windows, mirroring her spiraling thoughts. A part of her wanted to scream, to shield her mother from this painful truth, yet the urge to act to fight against this relentless storm pulsed within her, demanding to be released. That evening, with her heart in her throat, she found herself at the local radio station, the glow of the microphone beckoning her like a lighthouse amidst the dark, swirling waters of despair. "I just want to make sure we aren't forgotten," she began, voice trembling but fierce as she shared her family's struggle, a tale echoing the stories of many in Maplewood. Panic flashed in her mind. What if no one listened? What if her plea for help only brought more pain? But she pushed the thoughts aside, compelled by a need far deeper than her fear. She had to speak, to reach someone who could understand. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the broadcast ended, silence enveloped Mia like a suffocating blanket. Had she made a fool of herself? A nagging doubt seeped in, mingling with the exhilaration of having voiced her fears. The radio host's reassuring smile faded into the shadows of her mind. What if no one cared? Little did Mia know that Nolan Hart, a millionaire with a past he sought to escape, was listening intently, each of her words hitting him like a wave crashing against jagged rocks. Haunted by his own childhood sorrows, he felt Mia's anguish resonating with a pain he thought he'd buried long ago. Torn between the life he led now and the neighborhood he left, he felt an unshakable pull to help, but even as he made his plans, a heavy conflict brewed within him. Could compassion from someone so distant ever truly be trusted? As days passed, tension thickened. Mia wasn't just fighting for her family anymore, she was becoming a voice for the voiceless, yet the weight of responsibility bore down on her. The very thought of meeting Nolan felt like a pendulum swinging over a chasm of uncertainty, each tick a reminder of her fragile hope that and the flicker of that worry. She knew one thing for sure, the collision of their worlds was inevitable. But would she be able to bear the truth of a much larger struggle, both his and hers? Whatever happened next, the storm gathering on the horizon was sure to break. She could feel it. The next morning, the sunlight crept through the curtains, illuminating the kitchen with an uninvited brightness. Mia barely noticed as she sat at the table, tracing the edges of the eviction notice with shaking fingers. The uncertainty gnawed at her. How had everything escalated so quickly? She resolved to act again, not out of panic but from a growing sense of purpose. Today would not be like yesterday. As she pulled out her phone, the ring of the notification echoed, a vibrant reminder of the world bustling beyond her troubles. Instead of diving into her fears, she began searching for community resources, places that could help not just her family but others like them. Each click fueled her determination. She was no longer just a victim but a potential catalyst for change. Nolan had been thinking intensely about Mia since he first heard her voice. She had struck a chord deep within him, awakening memories he believed were long buried. He wasn't merely a millionaire, he was a product of his past, one that circled around desperate choices and lost opportunities. In remembering his struggle, he also found inspiration, not just for himself but for the others still ensnared in their struggles. The echoes of Mia's broadcast remained vivid, propelling him towards action. As he prepared to meet her, doubts wrestled with his resolve. What could he possibly say to a girl who seemed so resolute in her fight? He remembered his childhood, the moments when help would be meant the world yet felt too far away. He had made it, he was the exception. But how could he ensure that she, and others like her, didn't just survive but thrived? He could feel the weight of his privilege pressing against his conscience. Hours passed, and Mia found herself in a local cafe, meeting up with a few other young people from her school, each grappling with their own worries. The air was thick with shared uncertainty, underlined by a sense of unity in struggle. Feeling more empowered as she spoke, Mia slowly began to realize something profound: she wasn't alone in this journey. They bounced ideas between them, brainstorming potential solutions, driving each other toward concrete plans, but as she glanced at her phone and saw a message from Nolan arranging their meeting, she felt her heart rate accelerate. What if she failed to effectively communicate the urgency of their situation? The pressure to represent others began to mount in her mind. She wrestled with her growing sense of guilt. How could she convey the complex emotions of helplessness mixed with determination without being swallowed by fear? Later in the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia stood outside the designated cafe, her breath visible in the chilled air. She looked around, searching for him, her emotions flaring between dread and excitement. The looming shadow of possibility danced in her mind. Would he truly understand? Would he care enough to help? Unbeknownst to Mia, Nolan arrived at the same moment, his heart pounding not from wealth but from empathy. All his hopes rested on finding a way to connect with her. He felt she held the key to both their redemptions. Would their meeting unfold as she envisioned, or would it breach deeper complexities neither was prepared for? As they settled into their conversation, a profound truth awaited them both, one that could change the very fabric of their lives forever. Would they dare confront the scars of their pasts together, forging a new path, or would the weight of hesitation steal that chance away? The moment for clarity and uncertainty was at hand, a turn that neither had fully anticipated. Mia's heart raced as she spotted Nolan approaching, his figure framed against the dim cafe lights. She took a deep breath, trying to will herself into a calm that felt elusive. This moment was crucial, and she needed to harness every bit of conviction she had mustered over the last few days. Her thoughts spiraled. What if he wasn't who she hoped he was? What if he was just another wealthy person unwilling to listen? She realized then that the narrative didn't belong to him alone, it belonged to her. As they exchanged greetings, the air between them shifted. Mia could sense Nolan's curiosity, a tangible intensity in his gaze that felt almost palpable. This connection, however fragile, gave her the courage she hadn't fully felt in days. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "Your story resonated with me." "I know how it feels to be overwhelmed," he replied, his sincerity brushing away some of her doubts. With each word exchanged, Mia fought to articulate the complexities that bound her and her family to this suffocating financial threat. The eviction notice was just a symptom of a larger sickness, rooted deep in systemic flaws and societal neglect. She spoke about sleepless nights, the fear of losing their home, and the dreams that now felt absurd under the weight of her reality. Every syllable was imbued with the lives of hundreds like hers, each testimony a grain of sand in the shifting landscape of desperation. Nolan listened intently, his brow furrowing at the struggles she laid bare. He hadn't expected to be so moved. He had prepared to help tactically, yet here he was, caught in the emotional whirlwind of Mia's experience. A thought struck him: he had the means to create change, not merely as a benefactor but as an active participant in the solution. What if he assisted her in building a platform that could amplify voices like hers? "Have you thought about sharing your story more widely?" he asked, intrigued by the fire within her. "What if we documented this? Your journey could inspire others to take action." A spark ignited within Mia. The idea was audacious, yet it resonated with her desire for broader change. "You really think people would listen?" she questioned, a flicker of hope mingling with her skepticism. "People will listen when they see the truth. Your struggle reflects something bigger, and the world needs to know about it," he assured her, his eyes shining with an enthusiasm that fed her burgeoning confidence. Suddenly the air felt electric with possibility. Mia envisioned a project that extended far beyond herself, interviews, stories woven together, a campaign that called for real engagement with the issues plaguing families like hers. But as the excitement coursed through her, a concern bubbled to the surface. Would she have the strength to maintain her voice in this vast arena? Would her authenticity be diluted in the fray? As the conversation deepened and plans began to take shape, Mia felt a shift within herself. This wasn't just an opportunity to escape from her predicament, it was a chance to transform her circumstances into a force for good. Nolan saw the flicker of determination grow brighter in her eyes, emboldened by the valid prospect of impact. Was she finally on the precipice of becoming the advocate she dreamed of? But the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. With big ideas came the risk of failure, not just for herself but for those counting on her. The weight of accountability bore down on her shoulders. Could she truly rise to meet this challenge? Just as she settled into her thoughts, the cafe door swung open, letting in a gust of chilled air and a barrage of fresh faces. With them came a sense that the time to act was now pressing ever closer. The conversation turned toward logistics, but Mia couldn't shake the feeling that the horizon held both danger and promise. As her resolve solidified, a new question flickered in her mind: could she truly navigate the complexities ahead without losing herself in the process? Mia's next step was shrouded in uncertainty, one that could either bridge the gap to her dreams or plunge her deeper into chaos. In that critical moment, she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she became an agent of change, a catalyst for others. But in accepting this role, what sacrifices would she have to make, and would they be worth it? With clarity came a new mission, yet lurking beneath was a deeper truth she had yet to confront. Would she be prepared for the tumult that change could bring, or would the shadows of her past creep back in at the most critical moment? The moment Mia stepped out into the dim light of the street, her heart thrummed with a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. The night air felt charged with potential, echoing the newly ignited passion within her. Yet, within that vitality lay a suffocating weight. She had to transform her worries into action, but the fear of what she might lose haunted her. As she walked home, her footsteps were punctuated by moments of deep introspection. How many times had she hesitated at the threshold of change? The opportunity to rally others to her cause felt monumental, yet it brought the specter of vulnerability closer. The dread of failure gnawed at her resolve. Would this road lead to liberation, or would it bury her under the pressure of expectations? Arriving home, Mia's mind raced. She could take on this project with Nolan, but first, she needed a clear vision. The idea of storytelling the threads of personal histories interwoven into a collective narrative mesmerized her. It felt as though she had been handed a brush to paint the invisible canvas of her community's struggles. But what would that require from her? Mia knew the stories she aimed to collect weren't mere anecdotes, they carried the weight of shattered dreams and social injustices that demanded authenticity. She needed to approach each account delicately, ensuring she did not exploit their pain for gain. This realization ignited something deeper within her. She needed to be a careful steward of these stories, holding each one with the reverence it deserved. The following days were a whirlwind of planning. She transformed her living room into a makeshift office, surrounded by notebooks, pens, and her laptop. Mia crafted outlines, formats, themes, and potential interview questions. The structure grounded her, yet her confidence flipped like a coin on a ledge. When the day came to meet with Nolan again, Mia's nerves threatened to bubble over. Doubts threaded through her mind. Was she truly capable of leading this venture? Would he still believe in her vision? Yet, she steeled herself, reminding herself of the urgency of her mission. "Ready?" Nolan asked when she arrived, his encouraging smile warming her hesitations. "I think so," she replied, her voice nearly lost to the bustling cafe ambience. They discussed logistics, locations for interviews, potential fundraising, and ways to expand their reach. Each suggestion from Nolan seemed to infuse her with energy. As they talked about sharing these stories across platforms, Mia felt the pieces of her personal puzzle begin to fall into place. This project could amplify not just her voice, but hundreds of others echoing similar lives. However, as Nolan delineated plans, a thought lurked at the edges of her consciousness what faced her on the other side of this endeavor. The looming specter of confrontation became real. Some people would resist their narrative, some might even lash out. She would need to be prepared for backlash, for criticism, for personal battles that could shake her foundation. Mia took a deep breath. This was no longer just about documenting stories, it was about forging a path through the storm. She would need to fortify her resolve, cultivate resilience within herself, and prepare not just for support, but for backlash and rejection as well. "Let us do this," she declared, trying to keep her tone steady despite the churn of uncertainty inside her. As he nodded in agreement, Mia felt the weight shift slightly. They were setting out to illuminate corners of darkness in society, but uncertainty loomed like a cloud, blocking her vision of the horizon they aimed to illuminate. What if, when her voice went out into the world, it echoed back with hostility? Would she balk in the face of criticism, or would she stand firm in her truth? The question spiraled. Each thought layered her anxiety like parchment in a book, the story unfolding, waiting to be written, and deep underneath her growing ambitions lay an undeniable truth: Mia's personal strength would be tested in ways she couldn't yet foresee. Pushing against her. Doubts and insecurities would become her constant companion, for in each story they uncovered, pieces of her soul would be laid bare. Was she truly prepared to face what awaited? The conflict of self-doubt and determination was at a fever pitch, prodding her onward yet tethering her in fear. With every passing moment, Mia realized she had to confront not just the narratives of others but also the silence of her own hidden insecurities. The road ahead was clouded with uncertainty, but she had embarked on a journey that had no option of retreat. What awaited them, triumph or turmoil, remained to be seen, but there was no turning back now. The weight of each story demanded her authenticity, feeding her mission while testing her mettle. As they finalized their plans, Mia wondered if she could break through the barriers laid by her own fears. It was now the time to see if her voice could rise through the noise, or if it would fade into the background. The next steps loomed like uncharted territory, and the only certainty was change was on its way. With that, she faced the flicker of anticipation and dread that danced in the air around them. What revelations and challenges lay just beyond the horizon, threatening to shake everything she thought she had built? Mia sat at her makeshift desk, the soft glow of her laptop illuminating the swirling thoughts in her mind. The moment felt heavy, laden with promise and dread, like a tightrope stretched between two towering cliffs. Each email she drafted to potential interviewees held the weight of her responsibility, not just to share their stories, but to tell them authentically, honorably. Days blended into nights as she eagerly sought the courage to connect with people whose lives had been marred by hardship. Yet, as she structured her outreach, confidence flickered like a dying ember. Familiar fears clawed at her. What if they dismissed her? What if her intention to lift their voices only led to misunderstanding or worse, betrayal? One evening, as silence enveloped her home, Mia faced the mirror hanging on her wall. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she took a moment to study the reflection staring back. Her eyes, usually vibrant with hope, were now shadowed by uncertainty. It was easy to hold on to the fear of rejection, but denial would not fuel her fire. She was on a mission, and it would demand every ounce of courage she could muster. The next morning, with renewed determination, she carefully crafted her introduction emails. She balanced sincerity with professionalism, conscious of the lives she was reaching out to. With each click of send, she felt a mix of exhilaration and vulnerability. It was a step forward, a declaration of her willingness to engage, to be seen and heard in her own right. As responses began trickling in, her heart raced with anticipation. Some messages were warm and inviting, their potential interviewees excited about sharing their stories. Others, however, were less enthusiastic. A couple of replies echoed concern over the impact of their narratives. Words like exploitation lingered in her mind long after she hit reply. Mia paused, reflecting on her intentions with newfound clarity. This was not merely a project, it was an undertaking that demanded ethical practice, emotional intelligence, and a willingness to navigate difficult conversations. How could she honor their truths while shielding her own heart from conflict? It was a moral tightrope she had to traverse, and each interaction seemed to sharpen her awareness of this complex interplay between storyteller and subject. Weeks turned into frenzied days of interviews and conversations. Mia dedicated herself to listening not just with her ears, but with her heart. Every person she spoke to opened a window to their world, sharing painful truths wrapped in vulnerability. Yet, as she collected these stories, the fear of backlash began to loom larger. What if she misrepresented someone else's experience? Would her choices draw ire instead of understanding? One particularly jarring interview left Mia shaken. The subject, an elderly woman with a poignant tale of loss and resilience, had paused, searching for words. "You can break my heart," she had whispered just before the tears spilled over, "but don't let others break my story." Mia promised to be open, to honor that sentiment, yet she was unsure how to balance the fire of advocacy with the quagmire of dissent. The realization hit her hard: every choice she made would be scrutinized, and criticisms could rupture her resolve. The pressure to navigate not just her own feelings but the emotions of others began to warp her initial excitement into anxiety. That weekend, Mia decided to meet with Nolan, desperate for guidance. Their conversation swirled between laughter and gravity as they discussed the complexities of their endeavor. Nolan's insights prompted an unexpected realization: to truly empower others' voices, Mia would need to evolve herself. The project, she understood, was a mirror reflecting her own vulnerabilities back at her, a chance for her transformation. As she stood to leave, a question hung in the air. What if the validation you seek lies not in others' acceptance but in your own belief in this journey? He asked, a knowing smile on his face. Mia left feeling like the ground beneath her had shifted. She had come in search of external confidence, yet perhaps the truest challenge was awakening the internal belief in her own worth. Could she get comfortable with this uncertainty, wielding it not as a weapon but as a tool for personal growth? With each passing day, the crossroads loomed larger. Would she break apart in the face of adversity, or would she solidify her footing and redefine her understanding of her mission? The questions echoed in her mind like a haunting refrain. As she prepared for her next interviews, Mia stood on the brink of something monumental. The choices she would soon make could either bind her in self-doubt or liberate her in resilience. What awaited her in the weeks ahead would not just test her resolve, but meticulously peel back the layers of who she truly was. Would this journey reveal the strength she sought, or would it expose her fragility in the bright light of scrutiny? The foundations of her project were being built, but so too were the stakes rising. Mia took a deep breath, contemplating not just the stories she would tell, but who she would become along the way. The early morning light streamed through Mia's window, illuminating scattered notes and an empty coffee mug. Each blank page loomed ominously before her, a reminder of the stories yet to be told, the lives still unconnected. With every missed deadline hanging over her like a silent judge, Mia felt the pulse of expectation quickening. The realization sunk in deep: her project was not merely about gathering narratives, it was about shaping them into something tangible. Today would be different. Today, she would focus her efforts on the elderly woman's story, the one that had deeply affected her. A web of emotions enveloped Mia as she replayed the woman's anguish-filled warning, refusing to let someone simply copy her narrative without understanding her truth. Mia's role extended beyond the confines of asking questions; it demanded empathy, integrity, and a profound respect for the fragility of these shared experiences. Sitting down once more, Mia pulled the notes from their chaotic pile. Each was a piece of a larger mosaic, and with meticulous intent, she began analyzing everything she had gathered thus far. Patterns emerged, illuminating the invisible threads that connected the stories: resilience in struggle, hope amid despair. The faces behind those words formed a collage of humanity that she felt privileged to hold, a responsibility that now felt monumental. She tapped her fingers against her desk, wrestling with a newfound urgency. What did the woman truly wish for in sharing her story? With each stroke of her pen, Mia envisioned not just the woman's pain, but also her courage gathering strength to entrust her memories to a newcomer. As she bared her thoughts on paper, she started to shape the unfinished story into a draft, acutely aware that the right words had the power to honor her intent. As the day wore on, Mia meticulously crafted the first section of the narrative. The act of writing was cathartic, enabling her to articulate not only the woman's story but also her own internal struggle. For every line she penned, echoing the woman's experiences, she found a corresponding line within herself. Each detail brought forth internal revelations. The fears she had about presenting stories were mirrored by her own anxieties about vulnerability and acceptance. Lost in the process, Mia's focus was interrupted by a sudden message alert. A reply from one of her earlier interviewees arrived, expressing hesitation about sharing their story publicly. Her heart sank as she read their fears. It was another moment to confront her deeper dilemma: how to balance the authenticity of the narrative with the need for consent and comfort from her subjects. Was her passion justly overshadowing their fears? She set her laptop down, her heart racing against the backdrop of doubt once more. What words of encouragement could she offer without diminishing the essence of their emotional truths? Without forging ahead at the expense of those she sought to empower, Mia pondered if a direct approach might be the answer. Moments later, she crafted a thoughtful response, affirming the interviewee's right to family privacy and the sanctity of their story. In doing so, Mia found her voice resonating with a clearer understanding of her role. She was not merely a storyteller but a guardian of their legacies, tasked with navigating a complex maze of emotions. As her confidence began to solidify, Mia recognized she was transforming before her own eyes, aligning her ambitions with the genuine connection she sought. The innovative storytelling needed exceeded raw data. It required her to dig deep within, cultivating patience, empathy, and authenticity. By dusk, with a sense of accomplishment filling the room, Mia quietly closed her laptop, conscious that a monumental lesson had unfolded. Each interaction with those brave enough to share their pain had not just molded her project but chiseled away at her inner insecurity. She was stepping into a role that demanded both personal investment and persistent courage, yet, as she prepared for bed, a foreboding thought lurked. Would her spirit withstand the scrutiny ahead? Each narrative she chose to share would unearth potential backlash, and with that knowledge, her heart raced once more. Was she truly prepared for the weight of others' expectations and her own accountability? Tomorrow would bring another round of interviews, another chance to probe deeper. Would she continue to evolve in the face of discovery, or would the vulnerability she faced expose her assumptions about storytelling? The answers remained tantalizingly out of reach, waiting just beyond her grasp. With her heart echoing the uncertainties of tomorrow, Mia sank into her bed, readying herself for an unpredictable journey of emotional and professional transformation that loomed ahead. Would she emerge whole and empowered, or fundamentally altered by the experience? Mia awoke to the sound of rain tapping against her window, its rhythmic pattern mirroring her racing thoughts. The soft gray light filtered into her room, providing a somber mood fitting her internal unease. She had gathered a newfound understanding of the gravity of her role, yet the weight of the stories she'd yet to uncover loomed ever heavier. Selecting her outfit for the day, Mia felt the echo of her earlier choices. The professional attire she wore in an effort to project confidence now felt stifling. She opted instead for a comfortable sweater, its warmth offering a semblance of security on this damp day. As she stepped into her shoes, she could feel the sharpened awareness coursing through her. Today, she would speak to another subject who had expressed worries about sharing their narrative. Before leaving, Mia reviewed the notes she had taken during previous interviews. There was a patchwork of raw emotions and life's complexities embedded within those pages. Each story she recorded was like a beacon, urging her to develop an understanding of each individual behind the words. Yet, there was still a sense of fear that lingered. Would she uphold their trust? Would her crafted narratives honor their complexities? With a deep breath, she stepped out into the world, raindrops mingling with the perfume of the earth. The journey felt heavier today. Walking through her neighborhood while mentally preparing for her encounter brought anxiety tinging every thought. Was she equipped to handle the potential fallout if she treaded too deeply? Her heart hammered at the implications of her role while she clutched her notebook tighter. Arriving at her destination, Mia was met by a woman whose demeanor exuded both warmth and caution. Sarah, a retired schoolteacher, had lived a life full of stories yet carried an air of trepidation. As they settled into a cozy cafe, the aroma of coffee enveloped them, a contrast to the storm brewing within Mia's conscience. "Thank you for meeting with me," Mia began, her voice unsteady yet earnest. "I know you have some reservations about your story. Sarah's gaze dropped to her hands, tracing the worn calluses that told tales of early mornings and late nights spent nurturing young minds. It's just. I worry, you know. I've never shared this before. Her voice quivered like a fragile note. What if I regret it? Mia leaned in, empathetically, aware that this was a pivotal moment. It's completely okay to feel that way. We can take it slow. Your comfort matters most. A flicker of acknowledgement shone in Sarah's eyes, and within that moment, Mia recognized that their exchange wasn't solely journalist and subject, it was a dance of trust. The vulnerability could be a crucible, shaping both their stories. Mia noted the flicker of relief on Sarah's face, allowing her to see that she was not merely there to extract a narrative but rather to engage in a shared journey of discovery. As their discussion unfolded, the depth of Sarah's experience poured forth. Life as a teacher during tumultuous years, moments of joy overshadowed by crises, and a burning question of legacy. With every revelation, Mia pressed her pen against the page, not to record in isolation, but to weave their shared humanity into the fabric of their dialogue. Yet, as the conversation flowed, doubt crept in. Was she capturing the essence of what Sarah intended to convey? Would her representation hold true when written? With every word, her internal dialogue clashed with external expressions of support. Mia questioned her instincts, fighting the impulse to rush ahead. Should she try to interject a recommendation or merely let the words spill forth? By the end of their meeting, they had exchanged laughter, tears, and profound insights. As Sarah prepared to leave, she gripped Mia's hands. Thank you. This was different. Mia nodded, gratitude intertwining with fear. The weight of what she had gained carried with it the potential for misunderstanding and misrepresentation. The once familiar comfort of certainty had slipped through her fingers. Replaced by the vulnerability of raw discovery. As she left the cafe, she felt the storm outside had mirrored her own internal turmoil. Shivering, she pondered who she would become in the wake of this experience. Each narrative she touched transformed not just her subjects, but her as well. Today had stirred an unsettling blend of empowerment and dread within her. Reflecting in the stillness of the rain, Mia recognized the delicate balance she needed to navigate an artist captured in the act of creation, bound by the truths of the human experience. Tomorrow would bring yet another chance to delve deeper, yet that path was lined with the shadows of doubt. Would she find a way to articulate their truths without losing herself in the chaos? Or would the stories she strove to tell unravel her own identity in the process? The following morning dawned with a hesitant light, the stormy remnants of the previous day giving way to an overcast sky. Mia sat at her kitchen table, cradling a steaming cup of tea. Thoughts of Sarah's story swirled in her mind, each detail a thread weaving into the broader tapestry of her work. But the lingering taste of uncertainty dulled the flavor of her morning routine. How does one balance authenticity with the fear of betrayal? Mia knew she needed to embrace her role not just as a chronicler of experiences but as a facilitator of trust. To honor that trust, she would have to confront her own vulnerabilities head-on. She opened her notebook, determined to chart out the themes that had emerged from her recent interviews. With controlled energy, she began to jot down various keywords: legacy, sacrifice, connection, and fear. Each word tugged at her, evoking underlying questions that demanded answers. The oblique lines between subject and journalist blurred in her imagination. She mused, what if she shared more of herself? Could inviting vulnerability open the dam of authenticity in the narrative she was crafting? She remembered Sarah's hesitation, the crack in her voice betraying a life filled with both wisdom and scars. As a teacher, Sarah had dedicated herself to molding the future yet had feared sharing her own story. That contradicted Mia's growing belief. Perhaps the act of sharing one's truth raw and unadulterated was inherently powerful. But was Mia brave enough to take that leap herself? The clock on her wall ticked steadily, urging her to make a decision about the day ahead. Today, she was due to meet with a young artist named Leo. He had reached out with a fervent desire to expose his creative struggles, layered with a haunting past woven into his work. Plans quickly formed in her mind. This would be different. Unlike her previous interviews, Mia felt compelled to reciprocate the trust Leo might offer. The cafe where they agreed to meet was vibrant, brimming with the buzz of creative souls, a stark contrast to the muted tones of the world she exited. As Mia entered, she could feel the energy in the air and her heart raced with anticipation tainted by self-doubt. Would she be able to maintain her poise, or would the gravity of each story drag her under? Sitting across from Leo, she watched the way his fingers drummed on the table, a reflection of the torment he carried. With an inviting smile, she measured her tone carefully, considering the balance between professionalism and openness. "Thank you for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story," she said, heart hammering. Yet, within her, a voice whispered doubts. Would he mistakenly sense that she was still sorting through her own insecurities? The notion felt fragile, unraveling even as she grappled for fragments to piece it together. She would need to listen beyond mere words. There was a greater truth yearning to resonate beneath the surface, and that meant allowing space for her vulnerabilities alongside his. As Leo's narrative began to unfold, Mia found herself enraptured. He spoke of his art as an expression of isolation, a vibrant coloration attempting to fight against an inconceivable darkness. Each brushstroke, every whispered line, became a testament to battles fought internally. His passion ignited within her a new understanding how art could transmute trauma into beauty. But then his voice broke, exposing a painful truth. One of his most profound pieces had stemmed from his darkest moment, the loss of a beloved sibling. Mia felt the heat rushing to her cheeks as emotions surged within her. Amidst his sorrow, she realized a new urgency pulsed through them both. As they communicated, something deeper began to emerge. She would weave theirs into a narrative that spoke not only of struggles but also of resilience. Leo and Sarah had already offered her a glimpse into lives lived in between shadows and light. The integrity of their feelings pushed Mia to articulate her reflections. Suddenly, the air shifted, charged with potential. Could she share her own story? Would that disclosure strengthen their conversation or fracture it? The decision loomed like a weight, pressing her inwardly, a potential turning point that kept her tethered to the seat. Each second stretched into eternity as she faced the reckoning within her. The moment felt electric. The room, filled with muted chatter and the aroma of fresh coffee, faded into the background as Mia recognized what was at stake. This was not merely about her work, it was about the human experience. Today, she would have to confront the instinct to retreat. With an inhale deep enough to steady her resolve, she met Leo's gaze, ready to reach out for the truth. Would sharing her own experience fracture or strengthen their connection? The moment was ripe for revelation, both for Leo and herself, yet uncertainty lingered. Mia's heart raced, poised on the brink of vulnerability. The next words, whether uttered or silenced, held the power to shift everything. Would she dare open that door? Mia's breath caught in her throat as she held Leo's gaze, the weight of their shared silence pressing down around them. The cafe's vibrant energy buzzed in the background, a stark contrast to the tumult swirling within her. Did she have the right to intrude further into his pain? She questioned her right to this moment, clinging to a semblance of professionalism while battling the urge to be authentic. "Leo," she said softly, tracing the contours of her own thoughts, "I've been thinking about how art connects us. It seems you have the gift of transforming your experiences into something so profoundly beautiful and meaningful. But at what cost to you?" With a flicker of vulnerability dancing in his eyes, Leo nodded. "That's the ongoing battle," he confessed. "People see the beauty, but they don't understand the darkness behind it." Mia leaned closer, she could almost taste the depths of his experiences. The urge to reciprocate gnawed at her insides, urging her to share the fragments of her own story. Yet, every instinct screamed against it. What if it weakened their bond? What if he disapproved? While visualizing her words, she remembered the last time she had bared her soul, how raw and exposed she had felt. But Sarah's and Leo's testimony changed the fabric of her hesitation. Perhaps she needed to embrace her struggles, let them drape over the narrative like a protective cloak rather than a weight. Art can be a lifeline, she ventured, mind racing to harmonize her internal conflict while probing deeper into Leo's psyche. But it can also isolate us. He hesitated, searching her face as if gauging her sincerity. Exactly. It's like this double-edged sword. His fingers stilled on the table, and he took a breath as they fell into another silent exchange, each probing the emotional undertones wavering between them. Mia felt a surge of determination, heart pounding as she knew the momentum was shifting back toward her. Perhaps vulnerability could be transformative for both of them. I've struggled with my own forms of isolation, she found herself saying, the unsupported words tumbling into the atmosphere. There were moments when I felt my voice was lost, absorbed by the fear of judgment. The admission hung heavy upon them. Leo's eyes softened, and she noted the shift he was leaning into her now, not away. You too. He whispered as if her confession ignited a flicker of recognition in him. I think most people carry those shadows, and we rarely talk about them. There it was, a crack in her armor, the gentle urging of her buried truths. Mia pressed on, her voice steadying with what felt like trust. I often question whether my work should reflect my pain or if it should filter through a veil of apparent perfection. I've been scared to let others see the real me. I've been afraid as well, Leo replied, tracing patterns on the table, as if mapping something profound. Maybe in showing our imperfections, we create a canvas where others feel they belong. It was the connection Mia had sought, a bridge built of shared struggle. The realization lit a fire deep within, igniting purpose in her role as storyteller and truth seeker. They were inextricably linked by their vulnerabilities, navigating an intricate dance of honesty. Empowered by this exchange, she felt the embers of self-acceptance glow brighter. This could become the essence of her work, the blending of personal narratives in a collective of emotional resilience. She could weave the threads of her experiences into their narratives, untangling complexities that so often went unspoken. Yet, amid the newfound clarity, a voice of doubt crept in. What if her story was not compelling enough? What if the honesty she craved came with repercussions? Just then, as if sensing her turmoil, Leo asked, "What's stopping you from sharing, Mia?" The question pierced her facade, leaving her momentarily speechless. She had intended to navigate larger dialogues within her profession, but now found herself at a crossroads between amplification and anonymity. The room twisted around her, energy vibrating like the chords of a muted guitar. Was she ready to expose herself in the same breath as Leo had? Her heartbeat quickened as the magnitude of his inquiry became apparent. Taking a deep breath, she knew she was on the precipice of something immense. In this moment of vulnerability, she could forge a deeper connection not just with Leo, but perhaps with herself for the very first time. Resolutely, she met his gaze, poised to reveal the deeper layers. I'm learning that sometimes, sharing your truth can lead to an authentic connection. Maybe we're both ready to face that risk. As the words formed, a small shiver of both fear and excitement coursed through her. It was a revelation, a guiding light through the shadows of doubt that had kept her tethered. And just as Mia was about to invite Leo further into that uncharted territory, the cafe door swung open with a loud chime. The sudden intrusion shocked her, sending a jolt through their connection. An unexpected figure stepped inside, eyes scanning the room, and whether they would disrupt the pivotal moment or become part of it, Mia couldn't yet foresee. She felt the tension spike, a new layer of uncertainty swirling in the air. Who was this stranger, and what might they reveal about the precarious balance of her next steps? The newcomer stepped into the cafe, a familiar face from Mia's school, and the lively atmosphere felt weighted with expectation. This pivotal moment of connection with Leo hung in the air, yet now it was overshadowed by the sudden intrusion. Would this disruption break their growing trust, or could it weave an unexpected thread into their narrative? Mia wrestled with the discomfort surging inside her. The girl's attention shifted towards them, curiosity piqued as she overheard snippets of their conversation. A flash of recognition crossed her face, and Mia's heart raced. Would she join them, or flee, leaving them to navigate this moment solo? "Is that Mia?" the girl exclaimed, closing the distance. "What are you doing here?" Mia's pulse quickened. I'm just meeting a friend to discuss a project, she replied, struggling to balance genuine warmth with the urgency of her conversation with Leo. The girl turned her gaze towards Leo, who was observing the exchange with mild intrigue. He laid his hands on the table, a silent acknowledgement of the interruption, yet a flicker of connection still simmered with Mia. Could they hold on to it amidst this disruption? Hi, I'm Leo, he introduced himself, his demeanor relaxed despite the intrusion. Mia felt a slight shift, the tension in the air softened, and the girl's presence became less of a threat. They engaged in awkward small talk for a few seconds, but Mia could feel the weight of words that had yet to be spoken prodding her from within. This unexpected moment was a reminder of how the world outside continuously interferes with personal revelations. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was value in the chaos as well, a collective experience waiting to unfold. Mia, are you still doing that project about local stories? The girl asked, her enthusiasm contagious. Mia hesitated but felt the energy in the air shift once more, bolstered by the girl's curiosity. Yes, actually, she stated, her resolve solidifying, and I'd love for you to be part of it. The girl's eyes widened with surprise and excitement. This moment could become what Mia needed, a chance to integrate her fears and aspirations with the realities of her project. Really? I have a story too. It might not be much, but no story is too small, Mia interjected, her voice steady, reflecting the wisdom she had accumulated throughout her journey. Each narrative helped shape the larger picture. Leo nodded in agreement, his expression shifting to one of understanding and support. Their connection had borne fruit, perhaps this moment offered an opportunity to transcend their individual vulnerabilities. The girl's face transformed into a bright smile, and in that instant, Mia recognized the power of community, not in the sense of fostering collaborations to solve systemic issues, but rather forming connections that transformed individuals' paths. As they exchanged stories, laughter ensued, intertwining personal histories with authenticity. Mia felt the weight of her own fears dissipate like morning mist. Perhaps she didn't have to carry the burden of these narratives alone. Their interconnectedness bore the honesty that she admired, crowdfunding the courage she needed to weave her own. At the conclusion of their impromptu gathering, Mia felt an exhilarating sense of accomplishment wash over her. This was not merely a discussion, they had forged an alliance of shared experience, a bridge of understanding connecting their individual journeys. Soon after, they parted ways. With Leo's encouraging smile, Mia recognized that their shared vulnerabilities had opened a door to something deeper, a community of trust in which stories can flourish. Later that evening, as Mia reviewed her notes, a feeling of clarity washed over her. She had integrated her own hesitations into the fabric of the project, rendering it richer and more authentic. Her journey was no longer just about documenting stories, it had transformed her into a storyteller who understood the balance between vulnerability and strength. The culmination had begun. Mia realized she could transform her struggles into catalyst moments, nurturing not only her voice but also amplifying others through the profound connections they formed together. The once unbearable weight had turned into purpose, a tangible achievement realized. Mia had become an emblem of resilience, demonstrating the true power of authenticity. Now, as she turned her final draft into words, she stood poised at the threshold of becoming not just an advocate, but a beacon of hope. The lives she sought to illuminate would finally see the light. And, in that moment of realization, there was one resounding truth: Mia felt whole. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.